business orientation to save customers money. So that's the idea story. Let me talk a little bit about the transformations I think we need to see as an industry, because it's not a given that we're going to have an electric future. We have to make some perceptual changes despite the proliferation of products we're seeing. And the four that I can talk about are lighten up, stop worrying, basically eyes on the road ahead, and collaborate. So for lighten up, you might have seen this stat. Basically, a car today consumes 100 times its weight in ancient plants in oil. And as it drives in the least internal combustion, about 7/8, because the physics gets lost, is heat energy and friction in the transmission and so forth. And 8 really moves the car, of which 2/3 of which get lost in aerodynamic drag, heating the air, rolling resistance, heating the tires. 6% accelerates the car. If you look at your mass versus your car mass, all that plants, all the money you pay in gas, only about 0.5% moves you. And so fortunately, it works in reverse because acceleration, is a function of mass, so is rolling resistance. If you save weight, you can leverage the efficiency the other direction. And the fundamental thing in EVs, and the biggest misconception, is we have regen in EVs, so weight's not important. Well, Bright's modeling shows that's not the case. And unfortunately, a public report is just launched by the Aluminum Association Ricardo, which shows actually your battery pack slide, that graph on the right, is proportional to mass. Shrink your mass, shrink your pack size. As we know, expensive batteries are the biggest challenge of EVs. And it's a design strategy that does not require hope that the battery industry can lower its costs. It's systems engineering, which this town knows better than anywhere in the world. So stop worrying. What do I mean by that? Well, we've heard this, and Keith said, is the fuse going to go out if we plug all these cars in? Are we going to be at a collision? Are there going to be enough of these? Are consumers going to want them? Well, the reality is there's a lot of anxieties, and there will be challenges. Like any business opportunity, there's a ton of challenges, but they're not intractable. And again, if we focus on the opportunity, we're going to solve them. Public infrastructure. Are there going to be places for people to charge them? Well, study after study shows that most people are going to charge at the home and in the office. Very few are going to be, even so people live in apartments, well, they're going to plug them in at their offices. So it's a private issue like installing solar roofs, not a public issue like installing streetlights. Range anxieties. Well, it's only the case if you really want to just substitute a powertrain in a heavy car that goes 300 miles with a big battery pack, because you can't do it affordably. So these EVs that are coming all have about 80 to 100 miles range. And the answer is those are going to be good for a big segment of consumers, but for those who want longer range, they have the Chevy Volt. They have the Bright Idea. You can create, again, breeds of electrified cars that provide adequate range. Grid readiness, this is really part of where my expertise really comes from, in the infrastructure. And the DOE itself has said if they're plugged in at night, 170 million vehicles, which is most of our light vehicle fleet, could be plugged in without adding one extra power plant, because we all know that the base load capacity isn't filled typically at night. And the reality is it doesn't require a lot of sophisticated smart grid technology to get consumers to do it. In the EV1 days, all PG&E did was offer 2 time of use rates, a very normal, if not high, daytime rate, and a super cheap, low nighttime rate. And 85% of EV1 owners charged at night. And the expensive, fancy technology they used? Christmas light timers. Again, it's incentives. And last, battery cost. Again, battery costs will go down, but just like the computer industry didn't wait for storage to get to $1 a terabyte where it is now. They were making PCs when it was $1 a kilobyte. They were still making PCs, and they're making millions of them. There are design strategies now to deal with this, and as batteries scale up, electrified vehicles are just going to be more compelling. And back to the DOE, if we're not the only ones struggling with the loan program. You'll notice there has not been in this loan program one battery loan award either, even though the government is now saying this is our most important issue. So let me go quickly, eyes on the road ahead. The challenge is we are seeing a lot of conventional analysis coming saying, sort of master of the obvious, if things don't change, we're going to see a low penetration of EVs from my former employer, Boston Consulting Group, from the National Academy of Sciences. And again, my criticism of these reports is their analysis focus is here. They interview you. They collect historical data. They'll say things like, oh, it took 10 years for hybrids to get to 3%. Well, I'll ask you this. Let me have a Bob Lutz moment, a truth-telling moment here. How many compelling hybrids have there been in the last 10 years? I did a real scientific study of 10 of my friends, and the average is 2. There's really 2 compelling hybrids. I won't name them. You probably have the same 2 there. So it's almost a miracle that we got to 3% market share of hybrids. The reality, if the industry goes here and looks forward and looks ahead, we're going to start getting compelling products and compelling services. And I think we're in this direction. We just can't internally limit ourselves by listening, say, to consultants that only basically, whose information source is really us, that it's repeating back to us. And I am a former and recovering management consultant. Last, collaborate. And the IBM opening speaker said this wonderfully. I don't really need to go into super detail here because you guys are collaborating, with maybe the exception of a small company like Bright. And the question is, do you look at Bright or Fisker or Tesla or Think or V Vehicles or Carbon or Aptera or one of the maybe 10 viable US startups as a threat to your business? And I would say, no, we're not a threat to your business because we want to collaborate. We share the same suppliers. We have access to pools of money and innovation. We can be like skunkworks. And where Silicon Valley may think that, some people there think they can make a car, even though our contention is the Midwest can make a car. Silicon Valley can innovate on things like the electronics and the batteries. They know how to collaborate, Apple and Google. Or the pharmaceutical industry, they use small startups for drug development. Or Hollywood now, which the big studios are using small independent developers to put movies in their pipeline. So let me end on this. When we go to, and Alan dodged the question a little bit about the DC coherent oil policy, and I've spent a lot of my career looking at this. And the magnum opus for me was when I did get, with the Brookings Institution, the best thinkers in December of 2008 together to think about what a coherent oil policy for the US can be. And the simple answer is we're doing everything but the obvious thing. And the obvious thing is properly tax gasoline, a resource that we only control 3% of, and everything strategically aligns with pricing it properly like Europe has done. And the challenge, again, is it's not just, this is the biggest opportunity actually, is it favors electrification, but it also favors diesel, because Europe does differential diesel tax. It'll favor fuel cells. It'll favor advanced internal combustion engines. It is technology neutral, and the government is not in here then picking company winners and losers as it's been doing. It is letting the market decide, and as we've seen, the market will respond to incentives. That is why we're in a capitalist economy. And this is actually what our policy has been, which is not to do anything about it, so oil price has statistically been random and volatile. This is essentially a Brownian motion curve, and it shows that essentially oil price, if your forecast right now for your electrified vehicle depends on $4 oil, don't bet on it, just roll the dice. And right now we're letting OPEC roll the dice for us. And here's the catch. DC, right, I think the Automotive News wanted me to talk about, I'm the government and I'm here to help. DC leading Detroit in the auto industry, what if we flip that? What if we, for once, led DC? What if we got together and said, no, this is really an issue that the market can solve if we get the markets working efficiently. And let's lobby for that gas tax that all executives want, but there's that third rail issue in DC. But if we lobbied with it, if we partnered with, say, Chamber of Commerce's and small businesses, and we partnered with organizations that protect the working poor and helped promote this, officials they're not against the gas tax, they just think voters are going to revolt. And again, if done well, say, what if all the proceeds of that gas tax went into debt, to our growing debt? What if all the proceeds fully funded those highways and the remainder went to small business incentive loans or tax breaks and went to tax breaks for the working poor? What if? And that's the story, because again, I think at the end of the day, if I leave you with one thing, it's really look at all those electrified vehicles in Kobo and look at all this movement and efficiency, and really don't see it as a response to government regulation. Look at it as the opportunity of the 21st century to build a new industry, create millions of jobs, and create that dream that really was so integral to my family and my great-grandfather. So thank you very much.